Got our partisan political voices ready to weigh in on what they heard from Meg and the president-elect's incoming cabinet. Good morning to Danielle McLaughlin and Ben Ferguson. Stay with us.
Morning.
We'll speak with you right after the break.
Hi, we're the Holford.
Anderson Cooper and Cat. Eastern.
Welcome back. Let's bring in Ben Ferguson, a Republican and CNN political commentator, and Danielle McLaughlin, a Democratic strategist. Good morning to both of you.
Morning.
Good morning, Victor.
Ben, I want to start with you and what Meg Jacobs, our previous guest, talked about. Donald Trump intentionally picking members of his cabinet who will dismantle, in her words, the departments that they are now asked to lead. Does she have it right? Because some of Trump's supporters want these departments to be effectively dismantled.
Well, I think what you're seeing is Donald Trump realizes that many of these departments have become way too big and way overbearing and way overreaching on states' rights and the issues there for business to be able to actually operate in a climate that is conducive to actually growing and not shutting down and going overseas. I'll give you a great example. Rick Perry. He's an individual that said he wanted to shut down the department he's now going to lead. It's a perfect pick because he understands just how overreaching and how bloated this government agency has gotten. So do I think he's going to shut it down? No. Do I think he's going to be able to streamline it, save the American taxpayers serious dollars, and also allow for business to grow in this country at the same time? Yes. And that's why I think it's very smart, these picks. There are people that have said for a long time, we're going to drain the swamp. Well, part of the swamp draining is getting rid of some of these massive government agencies that have way too much bureaucratic oversight, and they want to make them smaller. It's a smart move.
Danielle, your take.
Well, I'm not sure draining the swamp is having the richest cabinet in the history of the country, but that's, I guess, a conversation for another time. There are some important things that the federal government does, and I can give a couple of examples. One of the most important things the Department of Justice does is enforce civil rights laws. And we have a candidate for the head of the DOJ who has come out and many times against notions of civil rights. It's very important. The second thing is not everything occurs in states.
Hold on. When did he do that? When did he do that?
Hold on. I'll let you respond to that, Ben. Go ahead. Finish your thought quickly if you can, Danielle.
Sure. If Texas is polluting and the states around its borders, it's polluting the air, what are the other states going to do about it? We have ultimately and intimately trans-state issues, certainly as it relates to the environment. You think about the air, you think about the water. That's why we have federal governments over those things. So there isn't a race to the bottom over environmental standards that not only affects the state in which those laws are made, but the surrounding states.
All right, Ben, go ahead. Respond to that.
Victor. First, I'm in Texas, so I know a little bit about how the clean air and water is. And come on down, instead of flying over Texas, actually spend some time in Texas, and you'll understand that Governor Perry, when he was the governor, and now Greg Abbott, have done an incredible job of making sure that this is a very clean state when it comes to EPA issues as well. So to say that somehow Texas is polluting the air around them is absurd. If anyone's polluting coming in, it would be Mexico. But let me move on back to something else you said a second ago. You said a moment ago that the Justice Department and the person that's going to be the Attorney General has made numerous statements that are in favor of some sort of racism in this country. Give me an example of where that is actually fact, because it's not the truth at all. It's nothing but fear-mongering that you're doing on that issue as well.
Danielle, the example?
No, that's actually not what I said, Ben, at all. What I'm saying is there are things that are important within the federal government, is certainly within the Civil Rights Department, within the Department of Justice. These are things that this country has worked for decades in terms of equality in any number of ways.
Give me an example. Give me an example.
Okay, so
I've heard the talk twice.
Interracial marriage used to be outlawed, right? And we had the Civil Rights Act. We actually had Loving versus Virginia, a Supreme Court case that determined that that law within Virginia was unconstitutional. Ultimately, we had other cases like that, not only with interracial marriage, but with other kinds of civil rights issues.
Incoming individual. This is the thing that drives me nuts.
Is that a criticism specifically of Jeff Sessions, though, Danielle?
I beg your pardon, Victor?
You pointed to Jeff Sessions when you said someone who's coming in as AG, and you go to the Loving case. Is that a criticism specifically of his record?
No, it's not. It's not. And in fairness,
then is it fair? Is it fair then? Is it fair then to saddle him with that?
back in the time during when he was first had some hearings. Obviously, this is decades ago. There were some issues. I think we should give all of these candidates.
Danielle, that seems a little too vague to try to saddle Jeff Sessions with that. Although there are critics of Jeff Sessions, to saddle him with the Loving case seems
no, I'm not, and I don't. I make it very clear that I'm not.
Hold on, Ben.
At all. I'm just saying there's a role for the Department of Justice, there's a role for federal civil rights, and there is a role for federal environmental regulation in this country.
Okay, Ben, let me come to you on another topic, because we could go on that line for a minute, but I want to talk about what Mitt Romney wrote in the Salt Lake Tribune this weekend, wrote a letter. It was really, really short. I mean, it could have been a series of tweets, but he wrote this in part. I was more than a little surprised that the president-elect reached out to me to potentially serve as Secretary of State of the United States. I see it as a welcome sign that he will be open to alternative views and even to critics. You opposed Romney potentially as the next Secretary of State. Is this what the consideration was about, being open to alternative views and even to critics, or was this a bit of ribbing, a bit of retaliation or revenge here?
Look, I think there was a lot of people that were saying, if you want to drain the swamp, and we elected you to go to Washington and be different, we didn't elect you to all of a sudden give Mitt Romney a job. There were a lot of hardcore conservatives that would be very upset with that pick. I think what you're seeing from Donald Trump, and I think this is a good thing long term, is that he's willing to listen to critics. The biggest speech Mitt Romney gave in the last 4 years was an anti-Trump speech. So since the day he basically lost the election years ago. So you look at this, and I think the good news is, for people that were worried that Donald Trump was only going to have yes people around him, not the case at all. He's willing to sit down with people that disagree with him. He's willing, like Nikki Haley, and to say, okay, you're obviously an intelligent individual. Tell me where I may be wrong on something, and maybe we can work together. And I think it's good that they have this rapport. I think it's good that they'll be able to have phone conversations moving forward. I don't think this was ribbing at all. I don't think he would have wasted that much of his own time meeting with Romney. I think it was a serious consideration. I'm glad to see that in his cabinet. But let me say one last thing, Victor, about what we just talked about. The fact that you have people that are coming out and criticizing Donald Trump's picks, and they have nothing to back it up, and they go back to decades-old cases that have nothing to do with the incoming Attorney General, just tells you how divided and how furious Democrats are they lost this election.
Nothing is a stretch, but I hear your point on Jeff Sessions here. Danielle McLaughlin, Ben Ferguson, we got to wrap. Christy, over to you. Thank you both.